Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. We thank Allah for granting us the ability to come together in a gathering again. And we ask Allah to guide us in our understanding and in our minds and in our hearts for the words that we're about to hear. And we ask Allah to send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon the Prophet and upon his family and upon his companions. I think Brother Abduladim is going to recite something from Qur'an for us at the moment. Assalamu alaikum everybody. It's really good to see you again. It's been a month, but it just feels like a long time. So inshallah I'll leave you across to Brother Abduladim.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سيقول السفهاء من الناس ما ولاهم عن قبلتهم التي كانوا عليها قل لله المشرق والمغرب يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا وما جعلنا القبلة التي كنت عليها إلا لنعلم من يتبع الرسول ممن ينقلب على عقبيه وإن كانت لكبيرة إلا على الذين هدى الله وما كان الله ليضيع إيمانكم إن الله بالناس لرؤوف رحيم قد نرى تقلب وجهك في السماء فلنولينك قبلة ترضاها فول وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام وإن الذين أوتوا الكتاب ليعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وما الله بغافل عما يعملون ولئن أتيت الذين أوتوا الكتاب بكل آية ما تبعوا قبلتك وما أنت بتابع قبلتهم وما بعضهم بتابع قبلة بعض ولئن اتبعت أهواءهم من بعد ما جاءك من الحق إنك إذا لمن الظالمين الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يعرفونه كما يعرفون أبناءهم وإن فريقا منهم ليكتمون الحق وهم يعلمون الحق من ربك فلا تكونن من الممترين ولكل وجهة هو موليها فاستبقوا الخيرات أينما تكونوا يأتي بكم الله جميعا إن الله بالناس إن الله على كل شيء قدير ومن حيث خرجت فول وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام وإنه للحق من ربك وما الله بغافل عما تعملون ومن حيث خرجت فول وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام وحيث ما كنتم فولوا وجوهكم شطره لئلا يكون للناس عليكم حجة إلا الذين ظلموا منهم فلا تخشوهم واخشوني ولأتم نعمتي عليكم ولعلكم تهتدون. So these kind of verses are in Surat al-Baqara, which is the second chapter of the Qur'an, the longest chapter. And these are very, very important verses because they teach us about one of the conditions of prayer, and that is that in prayer we have to face the Qibla, we have to face Mecca or the Kaaba. And this was revealed because the Jews of Medina were saying, why, they were criticizing why the Prophet was following, because before Mecca, Muslims were following Jerusalem. So they were praying towards Jerusalem. So Allah changed it, and the Jews were saying, why have they changed? And Allah revealed His verses to clarify it. And the Prophet himself, his heart was always connected to Mecca, and he always wanted to face Mecca instead of Jerusalem. So he told Jibreel this. He said, I wish that I would have a different qibla. And Jibreel alayhi salam, he said, well, I'm a slave like you, I cannot change it. But, I hope that Allah will do. And then when Jibreel went, the Prophet ﷺ was always waiting for Jibreel to come back and tell him that his qibla has been changed. Allah says in the verses that Allah will not it will not put your work in vain. No, your iman will not go in vain. And this is because some of the tribes of Medina, of Muslims, they came to the Prophet and they said, well, the people, our brothers, our family members, they used to pray towards Jerusalem, and now they've passed away. Is their prayer still accepted? So Allah revealed the verse that Allah will not go, it is not for Allah to go and to let anything go to waste. Right. So this change of qibla happened at about 17 months after the Prophet moved to Medina. Right. And finally Allah says in the Qur'an, it says in these verses that the people of the book, they know the Prophet better than they know their own sons. And this is because Abdullah ibn Salam, who was a rabbi who converted to Islam, Umar radiallahu anh, he asked him, how do you know your son, how do you know the Prophet is a prophet more than you know that your son is a son? And Abdullah ibn Salam, he said, because I definitely know from the scriptures that the Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. But my son, I don't have complete certainty, because my wife could have slept with somebody else, and it might not be my son. But I definitely know that the Prophet is definitely the Prophet of Allah. Allah also says that wherever you are on earth, wherever you pass away, Allah will bring you all together, because Allah has power to do all things. So the verses are many. So all the nations had the qibla for themselves? Is that how it is?
There's different meanings.
Allah.
Jazakallah khair. That's beautiful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We're going to continue, inshallah, as we've been doing in previous weeks, talking about some of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, some of the key statements that he made, and some of the important words that came forth from his blessed mouth ﷺ. We're hoping to cover 2 hadith. I'm just going to see how time goes. On the topic of clarity and priorities. These 2 hadith are very, very simple, very short, but they contain a huge amount of meaning. These 2 hadith we're talking about. Before that, I wanted to actually mention who the narrator of the first hadith is. It was very important that we know who he is. His name is al-Hasan bin Ali, who was the Prophet's grandson, and he narrates this hadith. The Prophet died when he was only when he was about 6 or 7. So at a very young age, he heard this hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, and he conveyed it to us. Al-Hasan bin Ali. Al-Hasan is the son of Ali, who married Fatima, radiallahu anha, who was the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. So Fatima married Ali, and their first son was called Al-Hasan, which means beautiful, which means great, which means good. And he has a very important part in our religion, and he had a huge place in the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet loved him dearly. The Prophet called him his son, and loved him, and even where this hadith is narrated, he's described it as being the rayhana, the kind of, the rayhana is a sweet flower. So the Prophet he's like the sweet flower of the Prophet ﷺ, and that was something that the Prophet kind of found comfort in, something that the Prophet found respite in. When you smell in the spring, when you smell a beautiful flower, you get a beautiful feeling of ease and comfort. And the Prophet ﷺ got that from his beloved son Al-Hasan, because remember the Prophet he had 2 sons he'd already lost early in their childhood in Mecca. This is in Medina. So this is like a son to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he treated like a son. And we could make the whole session about Hasan, but I just wanted to say a few things about him, because he has such a special place in the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and thus in our hearts. He's from the household, the Ahl al-Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as part of our religion to love them and to honor them and to have that connection with them. And once the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he was kissing Al-Hasan, and there was a kind of Bedouin tribe's leader, leader of one of the tribes, and he said, I've got 10 sons, I've never kissed any of them. And he was surprised to see the Prophet kissing his grandson. He thought the Prophet was some kind of macho, leader, he's a hard man. He's not going to kiss his own children or his grandchildren. But he said, I've got 10 children, I never kissed any. And the Prophet said, what can I do for you if there's no mercy in your heart? What can I do if mercy has been taken out of your heart? The one who has no mercy will not be. The one who doesn't show mercy will not be shown mercy. So we see this beautiful the humanity of the Prophet ﷺ, the way he treated his grandchildren, the way he treated everyone ﷺ, but this had this beautiful relationship. And he went time and time again. He expressed his love for Hassan and his younger brother Al-Hussein when he was born. And he said it's part of our faith to love them and to be connected to them. He once. And so he only had these few years with the Prophet ﷺ, but the Prophet would carry him on his back. The Prophet ﷺ would at times be in prayer, and Hassan would climb on his back, and the Prophet would wait for him to, pray with him on his back, or wait for him to get off his back. Once he was in prostration, in sujood, and the companion said, "You were prostrating for a long time." He said, "Yes, Hassan was on my back, and I didn't want to disturb him." This is the kind of, we think of this kind of gives us a picture of what the household of the Prophet was like, but also how it was in front of his companions and even in the mosque. Can you imagine a child climbing on the back of the Imam in the mosque today? It's very it was a very, very beautiful relationship. And many times he said, I love Hassan, and one who loves Hassan loves me, and so on and so on. There's many hadith of this. So he had those few early years with the Prophet, and then he had a life of adventure, and he's one of our great imams. He said, I made Hajj walking. I said 15 times he made it. I said I'm shy to astahi. I'm shy to meet my Lord, and I haven't walked to his house. So he lived in Medina. He would walk time and time again to Mecca to make Hajj. And there's just two stories I want to mention. There's a lot of stories, but there's one beautiful one that when he and his brother Hussein, they saw an old man making wudu, performing his ablutions, and they saw that he was making some basic mistake. Okay, but out of respect, they wanted to somehow teach this man how to make the wudu correct. Because remember, they learnt from the best of people. They actually learnt wudu from the Prophet ﷺ. But they wanted to teach this person in the best of ways without showing disrespect to him, honouring him. Because an old person, we respect our elders, and we don't want to hurt his feelings. Sometimes this is a lesson for us as well as trying to, when we teach people and educate them, we do it with respect and with humility and without hurting that person's feelings, because that actually might have a negative effect. They might just leave the wudu completely. So he said they came up with an idea that they came up to the man and said, me and my brother, we're having a contest. We want to see whose wudu is better than the other. So we're both going to make wudu, and we want you to judge whose wudu is better. Is mine Hassan or Hussein? Okay. So the old man watched, and obviously they made this beautiful wudu as they learnt from the Prophet ﷺ. Hassan made it first, and then Hussein made it second. Obviously there was nothing. It was perfect. There was nothing wrong with it also. And the man obviously realized something clicked, and he said, "Allah, Jazakumullah khair. Allah reward you. You're truly the sons of the Prophet ﷺ. You've taught me a lesson today that I've realized my mistake, but you haven't hurt my feelings. You haven't exposed me. You haven't, given me." So that was the first story. The other one is Hussein and Abdullah bin Ja'far, who was their first cousin. They were off on the way to Hajj. Okay, they were traveling to Hajj from Medina, and they had a camel which had their water and their food on it, so this camel managed to stray off, so they were in the desert without any food. These three great people, Hassan and Hussein and Abdullah bin Ja'far. So they came across a woman, a Bedouin woman with a tent. She was just in the desert with her tent, and they said, "Do you have anything to drink?" And she said, "Yes, you can milk. Just have one sheep, you can milk the sheep." Okay. So they milked the sheep and they drank. And then they said, "You've got anything to eat?" She said, "All I've got is that sheep. You slaughter it and I'll cook you a meal." Okay. This is the kind of generosity of the Arabs, the Bedouin. Okay. They didn't have any. That's all she had was that, and she gave it happily to these people. So they slaughtered it, and she cooked it, and they had a feast. And then they went on their way, and they said, "When you come to Medina, we'll pay you back, basically." But they didn't mention. They said they didn't even say who they were. They said we're from Quraysh. We're from the tribe of Quraysh. When you come to Medina, inshallah, we'll pay back the favor. Okay. So her husband came back and he was furious. He said, "How can you? One sheep, you've given the milk and you slaughtered it. We haven't got anything, and you don't even know who these people are." So time passed. I don't know how much time passed, but Hassan was sitting on his doorstep in Medina, and he sees this old woman coming by. And they were so poor, they'd come into Medina just to pick up dung that they would sell, to make enough food to eat. They had nothing. Okay, and he recognized her. He saw her and recognized her, and he called her over, and he said, "Do you remember the day when you fed us in the desert?" And she said, "Oh, you're that person." So he said he ordered his servants to bring her 1,000 sheep and 1,000 dinars. Give her 1,000 sheep and 1,000 dinars. This is the kind of generosity they had. Okay, and then take her to my brother Hussein. So that was the first thing. So she went to Hussein, and Hussein said, "How much did my brother give you?" And she said 1,000 sheep and 1,000 dinars. Okay, same again. So another 1,000, another 1,000, and then finally taken to Abdullah bin Ja'far. So she was taken to Abdullah bin Ja'far, and he said, "How much did the Hassan Hussein give?" He said 1,000 each. He said, "If you started with me, I would have made it very difficult for them. I'm going to give you 2,000 and 2,000." So she went back to her husband with 4,000 sheep and 4,000 dinars from that one act of generosity that she'd shown these people who are known for their generosity. So that's just two little. And finally, he was regarded as being the final of the Khulafa al-Rashidun. We always think of the four rightfully guided caliphs. Okay, traditionally we would think of that, but actually the scholars say that the fifth was Imam Hassan. For 6 months he was the Khalifa after his father Ali. The 30 years, the Prophet ﷺ said there will be 30 years of rightly guided leadership, and if you look at the 30 years, that included the time of that 6 months of Imam Hassan. And then he actually showed a great wisdom and great bravery. In fact, although it might seem like cowardice, he actually, because it was a point where civil war could have broken out, he actually resigned the Khilafah to Muawiyah. And the Prophet ﷺ actually foretold this. There's a beautiful hadith. He said the Prophet was on the mimbar giving his khutbah, and he saw Al-Hasan, and he was kind of wandering about in the mosque, and he said, "This son of mine is a sayyid, is a leader, is a great man, and the day will come when he will bring a truce, bring a treaty between two opposing armies, two great armies of the Muslims." So this truly happened when Hassan became Khalifa, that Muawiyah challenged him. Okay, and there was a point it looked like it being a huge bloodbath. They'd already been fighting the previous years. Muawiyah had fought against Ali, and so on and so on. So Imam Hassan said, "No, for the sake of unity, for the sake of saving blood from being spilt, he resigned the Khilafah. Even though he was the rightful Khalifa, he passed it on to Muawiyah for the sake of unity, for the sake of so that he kind of fulfilled the prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's a big lesson in that as well. That sometimes the kind of the courageous stance is to step down and to resign leadership or to step down basically. So he narrated only 13 hadith. Obviously, he was only 7 when the Prophet died. And this is one of them. The very very important hadith, very succinct, contains a huge amount of meaning. The Prophet said sallallahu alaihi wasallam that leave. He said, Hassan said, I memorized from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam this one statement: leave what makes you doubtful for that which does not make you doubtful. Da' ma yuribuk ila ma la yuribuk. So in a couple, 5-6 words, he summed up a huge principle in the religion, that leave what gives you doubt for that which doesn't give you doubt. In other words, stick with what you're certain. Build your religion on firm foundations. We have clear foundations and clear principles. Stick to those, and you'll never be in trouble. Okay. And in fact, the first verse of Surah al-Baqara, of the surah, part of the surah we heard, it begins with, this book, there's no doubt in it. ذَلِكَ كِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. And the word used here is from that same root. That leave what doesn't give you doubt. There's no doubt in the kind of core teachings of religion. There's no doubt. It's very clear. It's very practical. So if you stick to those things, you won't be in trouble. And this also, a few months ago, we talked about the hadith where the halal is clear and the haram is clear, but between that there are some grey areas. Okay, so if you stick to the halal and avoid the haram, you'll be fine. But if you go into grey areas, you're like, as the Prophet said, you're like the shepherd who grazes his sheep close to the perimeter fence, or close to the perimeter, and if they're likely to stray into the protected land, as the Prophet said. He linked this metaphor. So if you stick to what's known, to what's clear, then you'll be safe. So this gives us a lesson in priorities, that that sometimes we want to we want to learn a lot when we become Muslim. We want to learn all this and follow this and do that, but we should pace ourselves and focus on priorities in our learning, in our practice. What's the priority? What's the main thing? What concerns us most at this time? And this again comes in the second hadith we're going to talk about as well. That when I became Muslim, I was in London. It was a time when there was a lot of young Muslims were into political Islam. They're all about changing the world. And this word khilafah we just mentioned was coming up a lot. You know, we're going to bring down all these corrupt governments. We're going to change this, and you know, these are people that they only just started praying. You know, a few weeks ago, probably, or if they were even praying. You know, so they were like their priorities were. Yeah, and I was just coming into Islam and seeing this, and it was just completely missing the point. You know, get your foundations. You know, build the house, get the foundations first. You know, sort things out, and then you can talk about these things, and you can talk about changing the world. But Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, so it's about leaving sticking to what's clear. And in Surat Al-Imran, Allah talks about verses which are clear, al-muhkamat, and He talks about mutashabihat, verses which are unclear. And Allah says those who have a kind of deviance in their heart, they go and look and they debate and they go into these kind of grey areas, and they kind of try and this just causes people to doubt and causes people to causes confusion, basically. So from this hadith, there's a legal maxim that we have in the Sharia, which says that certainty is not removed by doubt. Okay, this comes through in many areas of law. Certainty is not removed by doubt. So if something is certainly is clearly established and well and you know for certain to be true, you don't doubt. If doubt comes in, it doesn't affect that thing. Okay, so for example, if you apply that to wudu, for example, so when you perform your wudu, you're certain you made your wudu, okay, and then you go out, and you go to work, whatever, and then it comes to dhuhr time. And you're wondering, was there some time during the morning that I might have broken my wudu or done something to break my wudu? As long as you go back to what's certain. So you were certain you made wudu at the beginning of the day. There's some doubt that maybe you didn't. Maybe you broke the wudu during the day, but that doubt doesn't affect the certainty. Okay, so your wudu is still valid. Okay, your wudu is still valid. If you prefer, you want to play it safe, you can make wudu again. But strictly speaking, the doubt that's come in doesn't affect the certainty that was the original principle, the kind of default. Okay. Likewise, for example, if you're, as a lot of us do when we're praying, we kind of our mind starts wandering and thinking about this and that, and you forget how many rak'ahs you prayed, you forget how many units of prayer you prayed. So if you're debating whether you prayed 2 or 3, for example, then you go with what's certain. Okay, you're certain you prayed 2, so you stick with that. Okay, the 3 is there's no doubt you may pray 2. The third one is in doubt. It's possibly you haven't, or possibly you have, basically. So you go with the second. You go with you've prayed 2 and then count from there, basically. Likewise, if you're making tawaf, 7 times around the Kaaba, if you're in doubt, you go with the lesser number. You're certain you've done 3, you may have done the 4th or not, so you go with the lesser. So it's all about kind of cutting off the kind of whisperings and doubts and making things clear, basically. Another thing this hadith points to is what's called is taqwa, basically, and scrupulousness, what's called wara. You're being very scrupulous, avoiding the dubious areas, and we talked about this before as well. That go with what your heart tells you. Trust your heart. Trust, that if you're in doubt about something, then take measures to avoid that doubt. Go with what you're certain. Go with what was clear. And then the more you progress, the more you feel that sensitivity that you're more aware of. We talked last time about what's halal and tayyib and all these things. So you're more heightened. As you progress, you become more. There's a more heightened awareness of what things are, and you become more cautious. But they shouldn't go to an extreme. There's another extreme where you become obsessed with, is this halal, and have I made wudu, and shaitan, actually, the devil comes in and whispers to you. It can be kind of almost like an obsessive thing which comes in, and you keep. Some people get into a thing where they're making wudu like washing their arm like 40 times. This is something, again, it's an extreme. So all the way through these, everything there's a middle way. Okay, so the middle way is to be scrupulous, to be aware, but not to be obsessed about it. To be obsessed, let's try. It says halal on the food. You don't have to go back to the slaughterhouse and ask and watch and trace the meat back, and you can be scrupulous. You can can try and find the best place and look at go into all that, but it shouldn't become an obsession. This is actually taking away from the main point of the religion. These are like subsidiary things. They're not the main focus. The main focus is what's clear and what's wrong. And we have many stories of the early generations, how scrupulous they were and how concerned they were for detail, and we can marvel at that and we can learn from that. Even if we can't necessarily apply it to our situation, but we realize there is a high standard. The Sahaba and the Tabi'in, they had this they're concern for what's halal and avoiding any kind of shubha, any kind of thing which is dubious. Imam Abu Hanifa, the great Imam, he was actually he was a great legal scholar, one of the greatest legal scholars of all time. But he was also a trader. He used to trade in cloth and silk and things like that. And he told his agent that there was kind of 40 rolls of cloth or whatever it was. And he said, in one of these rolls there's a slight fault in some of the cloth. Okay, so when you sell it, make sure you tell the person, that there's. You clarify it, open it up and show them that there's the pattern's not right, whatever it is. There's something. It's not 100%. I'm not going to give it sell it for its full price. Okay, so he went off and it so happened that someone came and just instead of buying one or two, he bought did a wholesale and then bought the whole lot. And this agent he forgot. He just sold it. And I remember Hanifa came back and said, "Did you tell him about the fault?" He said, "No, I'm sorry, I forgot about it." He said, "Okay, in that case, everything that you've taken, just give it away in charity. I don't want even a penny to come in from, or even a dirham to come in from this. Even though 99% of it was fine, but that's the kind of the state they were in." And Imam Hanifa was someone that had this immense scrupulousness. He was actually time and time again, the rulers insisted that he become a judge because they wanted someone of his great legal knowledge, and they wanted to be a judge. Both the Umayyad dynasty and then the Abbasid who later came in, both of them tried to make him a judge. Every time he'd refuse. So I'm not going to be like someone that signs on for you for the wrongs that you do and your oppression, and because they were doing things which were not too good. So he said, I'm not going to be a judge for you and speak at your name. And so they actually punished him. He was actually imprisoned and tortured as a result of this. And he actually died in prison, Imam Abu Hanifa, out of his scrupulousness, out of not wanting to be responsible for any oppression under his name. Even though he could have taken the position and he would have done it to the best of ability, but he was out of that fear and the concern for the well-being of the whole. Not just the Muslims, but the whole. There's a huge empire. You see, the Abbasid Empire was huge. Thousands of miles and millions of subjects. So he would have been responsible for those people. So he felt he wasn't going to take that responsibility. There's many stories in our history of how the scholars related to the Sultan, to the ruler. One of them would never walk. It would be hot. In the Middle East it's hot sun, and I'd never walk in the shade of the palace of the Sultan. So I'm not even gonna, what benefit does he get from that? But he said, I'm not even going to benefit from this ruler because he's oppressive, So I'm not going to even benefit from the shade of his palace, let alone eat from his food or take any of his money or whatever it is. He said, I'm not going to even walk in the shade of the wall of his palace. And there are many, many stories like that. There's a pious woman she would be knitting at night. She earned a living by weaving or knitting, and when the Sultan's patrol came past with their torches, she would stop knitting because she didn't want to use their light to have kind of benefited from their light, even though it's just like a few seconds of light that they were given. So there's many, many stories. And there's people in our time, one of the great scholars of Syria, who was actually one of the great scholars of our time, who was actually murdered in the mosque, unfortunately, in Damascus. And he, even though he was accused of being a government stooge and a government, he never took anything from the government. And he was to his old age, he was climbing like 4 flights of steps to a small flat in his 80s. This is someone that people accuse of being like a government agent. But he never once took anything. So it's not just in the early days of Islam. We still have examples from that. So finally, checking your priorities. That as we mentioned before, that someone might be doing. As I said at the beginning, build the foundation. Someone might be doing some acts which are wrong, and then they suddenly become very pious and very, very God conscious, if you like. But this is, as we said, it's not Rome wasn't built in a day. So prioritize what is the most important thing. Like a group of people came to Mecca. They're asking Ibn Umar, the son of Umar bin Khattab. They said about killing a mosquito in the state of ihram. So when you're in ihram, when you make Hajj or Umrah, you're in a state of sanctity. You can't kill animals. Okay, They said they're asking him about the ruling of killing a tiny insect when they're in ihram, the mosquito. They said, you're asking about this, and they were from Iraq, and you come from the people who killed the son of the Prophet ﷺ, Imam Hussein. They spilt the blood of Hussein. You're asking about something insignificant. Sort out the big things before you ask about the little things, basically. So it's about priorities. And this leads on to the second hadith, which is again very simple, very short and concise, and contains a huge amount of meaning. The Prophet ﷺ said that that we said that from a good sign of someone having perfected their Islam, that they leave that which doesn't concern them. From the sign of someone perfecting their Islam is their leaving which doesn't concern them. Husn Islam mar'i tarku ma la ya'nihi. So this is a very short and simple, seemingly simple statement, but it contains a huge amount of meaning. And the scholars have talked at length about this hadith. And one time they said it sums up half of the religion, because half of the religion is doing and half of the religion is leaving. Okay, half of the religion is acting and half of this is avoiding things. Half of the religion is the halal and half of it is the haram. Okay, so you leave what doesn't concern you. That's dealing with half of the religion. And someone said it actually sums up the whole religion, because it tells you what to leave and what not to leave. So it kind of gives you gives you everything, basically. So first of all, the Prophet said, "Min husni Islam." This is very important. The Prophet said that from the beauty, from the perfection of someone's Islam. So in other words, there's a message there that we should be seeking to make our Islam perfect and make our Islam beautiful, to emulate the Prophet ﷺ, and not just to be content with kind of mediocrity. That min husn Islam. If someone, it's okay. Your Islam's acceptable. If you want to perfect it, then leave that which doesn't concern you. But the Prophet was pointing towards ihsan, towards making things perfect and making things beautiful. And the more we work on this, the more we try and perfect and complete our Islam, the more the greater the reward and the greater the effect of our actions will be. When we try and focus on making things beautiful, making things perfect. The Prophet says that one of you perfects their Islam, that they will every good deed they do will be multiplied tenfold, or up to 700 times. So in other words, the more you work on perfecting Islam, the greater weight your actions will have, and the more significant your actions will have. Every prayer will have to be more significant, every act of charity, and so on and so on. And we live in a very, we have a limited amount of time, we have a short life, we have obligations to fulfill, we have to prioritize. And we'll be asked about how we spent our time. We asked about how we spent our youth. We asked about how we earned our money, how we spent it. We asked about how we used our knowledge, whatever knowledge we have, we're responsible for. Okay, so everything, all the things that we'll be asked about. So it's again prioritizing what are our immediate responsibilities, what are our worldly necessities, our food, our drink, our shelter, and so on. Fulfilling the rights of those around us. These are obligations, and then trying to fulfill the obligations towards our Creator. And so it's like focusing on what's starting with what's most important, and then prioritizing, and choosing what's the most have the most benefit for you and the most reward in the next life, and will be with you the most. Imam Ghazali said that one of the greatest scholars of Islam, he said that is a metaphor he gave for this hadith is like someone goes into a mine. Okay, there's a mine where there's jewels and rubies and emeralds, but that person goes in and fills their bag with just earth. They could have potentially taken something very valuable, but they just filled the bag. They have a bag. They have a limited amount of time in this mine. They have to fill it they could have filled it with jewels, but they filled it with earth, and they come out of the mine and they've got nothing. Okay, so this is a metaphor for this life. That you have an opportunity to take things that are of everlasting value and benefit. You can choose what you fill your bag with. That doesn't mean to say that in life is all deadly serious. All we have to do is just worship and focus on obligations, and that's we have time for leisure. We have time for pleasure, and we see that in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Everything had a time, had a place. And if your leisure time, if you do it with the right intention, it becomes an act of worship. Your sleep, if you do it with the right intention, as the first hadith we studied tells us, that actions are by their intentions. So even eating and drinking, if you do it with the right intention, it becomes an act of worship. The time you spend with your family is it's an act of charity. It's mercy, and so on and so on. It's what intention you do it with. So it's not it doesn't mean you can't eat well. You have to take exercise. You have to socialize. All these things are part of our life. But when we're talking about prioritizing, but if you do it with the intention that has an ongoing effect, that you're going to take the fruits of that in the next life, basically. So all of this is leaving which doesn't concern you. This is the kind of message of the hadith. And this makes for a healthy state of mind. When you get dragged into that which doesn't concern you, it affects your state, it affects the society and communities. We have communities that we have priorities as Muslims, and we find that often those priorities aren't focused on. We get caught up in other things of no concern, things of no value. Even within the religion, even when the debates that we have in religion and so on. Again, going back to the first hadith, what's the main things? What's the foundation? What's area of no doubt? We can debate about the kind of subsidiary issues as long as we want, but what are the foundations there? Do we have functioning communities where the needs of our communities are taken care of? How are our children and all these things? Imam Malik was asked about his age. The great Imam Malik. Someone asked him, "How old are you?" And he said, "Mind your own business." He said, "Aqbil ala sha'nak," which means focus on what's relevant to you. Don't be nosy. Focus on what's relevant to you. And there's a hadith actually narrated this with this. Every person says to the other, just focus on what's relevant to yourself. So this is it's like a valuable approach to life that focus, and we have such information overload and so much so many things competing for our attention. This gives us a principle here that leave that which doesn't concern you, and leave that which we're doubtful over. These two hadiths together. And then Hasan al-Basri, from the great Tabi'in, the generation after the Sahaba, he said that one of the signs that Allah has turned away from a servant is that the servant finds himself constantly preoccupied and engaged in matters which are none of his concern. If Allah wants good for you, He puts you where He wants you to be. And if He doesn't, then you find yourself engaged in all kinds of things that take you away from the main purpose of your existence. So they mentioned three things to try and attain this quality of focusing on what's relevant. One is awareness of God, be in a state of awareness of God and remembrance of God, and even like a shyness in front of God. That this is when you reflect, when you think about things, that this is my life, and this is how I'm this is how I'm spending my time. So that leads to a kind of awareness that God is watching you, and God is aware of. And what do you want to present to Him? How do you feel in front of Him? The second one is controlling your speech. So when a lot of this relates to speech, just talking. When we think about what doesn't concern you, it refers to a lot about speech, what you say and what you talk about, the topic of conversation. They say that most people speak around 16,000 words a day. They've done kind of research, and they say that 16,000 words a day. So think about even if it was half of that how many of those were of benefit? How many of those will actually last? The words that we'd be taught, such as Subhanallah and these words, they have a weight on the scales. But a lot of the words we say don't have that weight. So if you were to weigh out all those 16,000 words at the end of the day, how much of them were for Allah, or for remembrance of Allah, or giving advice, or giving words of consolement, or how much was just dead, what they call dead speech? Dead speech doesn't lead anywhere, doesn't have any fruit. And they say if you're not going to be rewarded for the Prophet would only speak if there was a reward in what he was going to say. If there was no reward, he'd be quiet. And he's described as being constantly quiet, constantly silent. Even though we have so many words of his that were recorded, but a lot of the time he was quiet. And when he spoke, it counted. We speak a lot, and a lot of it doesn't count for much. But the Prophet spoke a little, and what he did say is counts for everything, basically. So that's a lesson to all of us, myself included. And think about how you spend your time. Hasan Basri said again that you're nothing but a compilation of days, or breaths. You think about all you are is just a collection of days. Your days are numbered; they're always decreasing. Okay, so how do you? And every time a day passes, that part of you is gone. It's never going to come back. So just think about time and understand your priorities. Imam Nawawi said that disregarding the prioritization of good deeds is in itself a bad deed. So there's like a fiqh, there's an understanding of understanding what's a priority and what's not. And if you disregard that in itself counts against you. So it's a question of an understanding what is a priority. I know I've been talking a long time. Every word is inshallah on the scales. But I just wanted to finish with a few reflections from as an article I read about it was about news, actually, the danger of news. Okay, we're in it very much. Everyone's has to follow the news and has to be up to date what's going on. There's an article that you could I can send you the link if you like, about the dangers of news. He mentions this Diabelli is called. He mentions a whole host of detrimental effects of following the news, and he says that you have to have just a detox and just leave news completely. And this is good for us as we think about Ramadan and preparing for Ramadan. And he says that mentions all these negative things about news, such as it being misleading, being manipulative. It limits our understanding. It's even toxic for our bodies. It causes stress. It causes anxiety. It gives us the illusion of caring. Okay, so you know the state of the people in such a place, as if it gives you the illusion that you're caring and taking part, but you're actually not actually doing anything in reality. It makes us passive. It kills our creativity and so on. But then he said, news is to the mind what sugar is to the body. News is to the mind what sugar is to the body. News is easy to digest. The media feeds us small bites of trivial matter, tidbits that don't really concern our lives and don't require thinking. Okay, that's why we experience almost no satiation. We're never full. We always want more. Unlike reading books and long, deep articles which require thinking, we can swallow limitless amounts of news, like bright coloured candles. They just flash, and we can take all that in. But it takes a lot to read, to sit down and read. They have the long read in some, this, again, warning you, this is going to take more than like 1 minute of your time. Out of the approximately 10,000 news stories you've read in the last 12 months, name one that allowed you to make a better decision affecting your life, your career, your business, compared to not having swallowed that piece of news. All the stuff you've heard and all the stuff you've taken in, what of that has actually changed your perspective? And it's very difficult for us to recognize what's relevant. It's much easier to recognize what's new. Okay, what's new naturally seems to be important. It seems that we have to focus on that. But what's actually relevant to us and to even to the bigger, what's relevant to the world, to the state of the world. The news creates a worldview that is not relevant to you. And what does relevance mean? It means that what is important to you personally. Relevance is a personal choice. Don't take the media's view of it. The media is telling you what's relevant. You have to decide for yourself what's relevant, what concerns you as an individual, as a Muslim, as whoever you are, wherever you are. For the media, anything that sells its copies is relevant. Whatever the latest thing that's relevant to them, because that's what sells them there. And finally, there's another article that just about social media, but I thought this was very, very powerful. This woman said that, have you ever wondered why social media apps are all free? Why are they all free to download? She said, because we are not actually the customers, and the social media platform itself is not the product. We're not the customers, and the platform is not the product. Rather, instead, the customers are advertisers, and the product is our attention. The product being sold is your attention. Okay, you're giving. That this is a really big deal, because our attention is the most valuable thing we have. When we decide what to pay attention to in the moment, we are making a broader decision about how do we want to spend our lives. So you've decided, when you give something attention on Twitter or whatever it is, you've decided that's worthy of your attention. That's the kind of statement about yourself and like where what your focus is and what your priorities are. So you decided to give that time to that thing. So that's you're actually taking part in this whole. You're actually you're promoting that thing inadvertently, but more importantly, you're giving that person that thing your attention, and that's the most valuable thing you have. Because as one of the verses that was to go back to where we started, لِكُلٍّ وِجْهَةٍ هُوَ مُوَلِّيهَا. Everyone has a wijha. Everyone has a direct. It's talking about the Kaaba. The verse is talking about the Kaaba. Everyone faces the Kaaba from wherever they are. That's one meaning. But another meaning is everyone has a direction they're facing. Okay. Everyone has a motivation. Everyone has a drive. Everyone has an ambition. Everyone has a wijha, which means what direction you're facing. Okay, so when you decide to give your attention to such and such a thing, that's that's taking your wijha, that you're facing that thing and giving your attention to that thing. It could be channel something, it could be face somewhere else or channel somewhere else. Okay, so it's really about asking ourselves what is our wijha, what's our direction, what's our priority, what do we want to focus on? And it's very, very difficult when you have so many competing for our attention and competing for our time. So inshallah, Allah enables us to act on some of these things and to follow these very powerful pieces of advice. Leave what doesn't give you doubt for what gives you doubt, and leave which doesn't concern you. That sums up what we've been talking about, inshallah. So I think I've been talking for quite a long time.
Thank you.
Anyone ask anything or add it or comment or help us to save ourselves from...
I think one of the most important things that we've got just now is the whole thing about social media, and sort of leaving things that don't concern you. So how many arguments do you see that just started, and it can be over something really trivial, but people sort of focus on that, and what it does is it takes your attention from what's really important, just as you were saying. So sometimes you just have to stop yourself, so if you want to make a comment on something, you can just say, just stop yourself and say, am I going to actually add anything to it? Is there anything I actually can say to it? And just sit back and don't do that, and simplify it, and then use your attention somewhere else which deserves it more. Because you're surrounded with all this aggravation on social media, so everything's there to irritate you and annoy you, and people end up getting angry, and they're getting angry about the wrong things. They're not getting angry about the things that really matter. They're getting angry about really trivial things. So especially like you're saying, Ramadan coming up, you've got a month where you can sort of cut yourself off a wee bit, and then inshallah maybe after Ramadan it won't be the same as normal. You've taken a wee step back and maybe a bit less reliant on it, and then you can take that not just social media, because it's like when you're talking to people, if it's not beneficial, there's no real need to say too much, and if it's the opposite of not beneficial, so maybe you're criticising someone, then maybe you should not be saying that at all, and sort of cut back. So inshallah it'd be good if you can, in Ramadan, you sort of try and put something into practice, know for myself, because you're surrounded by things, everything happens in social media, it's hard to get away from it, but if you just concentrate on simple things, then that's more entertaining than what you'll see in social media, and eventually people get fed up with the things that are happening, and then they'll find something there. So I think it's a good lesson there.
And Ramadan fasting is about self-control. We think about food and drink, but it's also controlling other things, and that's one good example. If you can leave food for 17 hours or whatever it is, then you can, but you can't control this. You can't control the niggling, desire to, get on your phone. So that's teaching you that, so you should apply that to that. It's easier said than done.
So I think it's good for all of us to use the next couple of weeks before Ramadan to look at these things in our lives and think, are there particular things that I waste a lot of time on that aren't really of any benefit, and how can I replace them with things that I keep meaning to do that would be of benefit, and make our plans now that we can start putting into practice. And I mean, it's great, isn't it, that Ramadan's a whole month where we can
about time
do these things. That's one of the blessings of Ramadan, to look at what needs changing in our lives and then try and put it into practice, and then try our best to keep it up, so that we see ourselves growing from Ramadan to Ramadan.
I think the first stage is actually recognizing how many hours. You can get apps that tell you how many hours you use, and people usually, I think all of us would be, most of us would be just shocked at how much time and how many times you actually check your phone. So it's almost the first thing is even just recognizing that there is an issue there, and you have to deal with it. And you say that's the preparation for Ramadan.
Because one of my sons, he told me to put this up on my phone. It's more than 2 months ago. And so it's called Forest. So every time you activate it, for a certain amount of time, say for half an hour, 2 hours, it means you can't use the phone at all for that time. So it's probably 3 months ago he told me to put it on. I haven't activated it once yet. So if I think about it, I think, oh no, I need to text that person. It just shows you how big a part of our lives.
You even need an app to do that. You can't actually turn the phone off yourself. You need an app to tell you. It's just like we're so overcomplicating everything. You could just turn the phone off and put it in your cupboard, but you have to have an app to kind of.
But on the other hand, it is good when you've got friends overseas.
Oh, of course.
Keep in contact.
There's so many good sides.
Yes.
And lots of WhatsApp groups, people share really beneficial things, like lectures and reminders. So that
if you choose correctly, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a choice. It's prioritizing. If you.
Just what the verses say, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Always find the middle way in everything.
That's right.
I think sometimes it's just like simplifying things. So it's like, sometimes if you've got a lot going on in your head, and then you come to prayer, and it's in your head, and it's hard to get things quieted down. But if you just try and quieten your life by not listening to so much, and simplify your things, then that becomes easier. Because you always complain, it's like maybe it's hard to concentrate on something, but you're fed information all the time. Everything's in TVs, social media. You're surrounded by it. So it's like your brain's only got so much capacity. So if you try to filter some of that out, and then you might have more capacity to concentrate on things that really matter to you, whether it's reading or learning something. But then a lot of time your head's so full of everything that's going on that it's hard to get that quiet space. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because people used to talk about being bored. It'd be good to have time to be bored. It doesn't seem to be time. I never feel bored.
That's what they say in these articles. That if you, it's good to be bored because that's the creativity comes in. But now when a constant entertainment, constant engagement with there's no time to be bored. So you're not actually actively using it.
So you should let your children actually have time totally, definitely without phone and TV, but to be bored.
We're bored, and then they just start coming up with amazing things.
Oh no, you need to go to this lesson and that lesson and gymnastics here after school and they just sometimes need to do nothing. Because that's when their brains.
And these days, kids
more creative.
Kids are not.
They don't know how to be bored.
Their mothers are taking them everywhere.
One of the things I found, even just the last few days, is when you make a wudu, just I always keep on saying go back and look at your wudu and sort of see if you can improve it. And but I've been trying to sort of simplify it a lot, but concentrate it on. And I've tried it before. It's like if you use as little water as possible. So rather than have the tap sort of running full blast, because that's excess as well. So you're kind of wasting the water in some ways, because there's no need to do that. But there's also like a mental kind of sort of thing, because it's like you turn the tap on full blast, so everything's just getting wet, but you're not really concentrating on what you're doing. Whereas if you maybe use a little jug or a little bottle of water and just do it, and you've slowed everything right down, and you're concentrating on what you're doing. So doing a lot of things doesn't mean to say that you're doing things better. If you just do them, try and simplify things and do things with a bit more care and consideration. And even if you're not doing care and consideration, at least you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about what you're doing. So it's just quietening your brain and sort of simplifying things. I think it's a big help, and it's good for the environment as well.
just the act of turning the tap to a slow stream, it does something, because then you do seem to concentrate. I was listening to Sheikh Imran Hussein, and he was talking about that subject of us wasting water, where before it was people did with a vessel. So it was from then I always remember now what he said, and put the tap at a very slow stream.
Something's coming in my head about, I've read it, about using clean earth. What was that? Remind me.
That's tayammum when you can't use water, or you're ill, or you can't got an injury, or you're in a place where there's no water. The earth is a substitute for the water, basically.
It's kind of what sticks in your mind, isn't it?
Do you know the Batul's book, A Simple Guide to Prayer? So that's got a section in there on when would you make tayammum and how would you do it?
That's why it's stuck in, isn't it? That's why it's in there.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah, I mean, there's times you don't have water, or maybe you've got an injury that you can't get wet and things. You know, so there's ways there's ways to deal with all the situations that you come with. You know, and nothing's new. Everything's been done before. You know, but sometimes it's like you got all this information on you, so you actually forget the way it was done in the first place. You know? So, yeah. And I think again, go back to what Amin was saying at the very start. You know, is like go back to the wudu thing again. So if you forget how many rakas of prayer you've done, or how many times you wash your hands, or you know, but if you're doing things really slowly and you're concentrating and you're not doing everything in a rush, then you're less likely to forget how many times you've done something. You know, so your brain's less cluttered with what's happening, so there's less chance of being doubtful about situations.
It does help to say Bismillah before you start.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
They say there's a special shaitan whose job is just to whisper it when you're making wudu. So when you say Bismillah, inshallah.
I mean, you can't get out of bed, Bismillah.
Yeah, every
I read the hadith that if in prayer you do one less or one more, even if it's not your fault, then shaitan laughs. And then if you guess right, and you know, then he becomes angry if you do the right number. So, yes. But I heard reading Surat Nas before any action is good as well. Surat Nas, because it, yeah. So, but definitely with the Ramadan thing, I just from basic experience, that if you go into like hardcore into Ramadan, thinking I'm going to leave everything that I should, it just doesn't work that way, and you'll end up hating Ramadan because next time it comes around, it's just too difficult.
Yes,
You'll have to do that again.
You have to have a realistic plan.
Yeah, realistic.
A balanced plan. You have to know yourself, and I just say do something. If you do something that's, you know, just as you say, so hardcore, you're not going to be able to keep it up. So then you lose. You feel downhearted, and you think, what's the use? So yeah, it has to be realistic.
It's the same for a lot of issues, especially the convert. You want to do everything, and you end up taking on too much, and it becomes a burden, and then you actually fall back to less than you started with, and it becomes you end up hating it, as you say. As many the hadith is about just taking everything slowly and don't take on too much. Otherwise it will overcome you. You know, this is a huge thing we're talking about. Salah, and we forget how these, you know, wudu, salah, these are day-to-day things, but they're huge. They have huge meanings and they're huge significance. And it's just take it easy. Ramadan, you know, it's fasting.
Are you thinking about doing a special class about Ramadan?
Yeah, we're going to do a one-day course, inshallah, on Saturday, the 5th of May. We're just finalising it now, inshallah. Yeah, like but we can, if that's too much for people, we could do like in one of these sessions we could do like a condensed. So that would be like a
I spoke to some people in Jordan and Egypt, and they can't believe how long Muslims fast in Europe. How did you do it? I mean, last time I did it 2 years ago, I was on Palestine time. So as soon as it was 6 p.m, so that wasn't too bad, but this time it's a little bit longer.
Yeah, but it's amazing how it's not difficult the way we expect it. Because you know, the last few years, you know, you say to friends after the first few days, how is it? And they say, it's so easy, isn't it? Because we get a little bit anxious beforehand.
You just got to remember to have a lot of food at the right time. I know it's the middle of the night, but eat a lot, drink a lot, go to bed, and then wake up.
Not just that.
Although you know, you start off thinking, I'm going to eat this and this, and I'll find after a few days it's just a little bowl of soup. You know?
Stomach shrinks and you can't actually physically eat that much anymore.
Well, that's why I'm starting now. I'm sort of like slowing everything down. So it's not as much shock to my body.
thing I always love about Ramadan is because people that aren't in Islam, they think, oh, Ramadan, you're fasting. It's like it's a really hard thing to do, but it's like you have a party every night when you do have food. It's a big celebration when you have food. And you appreciate it. You appreciate it more. The taste of that first sip of water, and if you break it with a date, it's so you really enjoy things a lot more because it's, again, you simplify things out, and rather than snacking and eating processed foods during the day, you eat more natural products. So there's goodness in the products that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has given us. And there's barakah in them. So if you get away from the process side of things, and you maybe so it's like Amin was saying, it's like we should maybe when we're speaking, so maybe not thank Allah more, talk about Allah more. So when you're making your meal, thank Allah for everything you're putting into it. He's giving you this sort of the goodness in the meal, and that will give blessings in the meal itself, and that you take, and it's much more useful than just opening up something that's already sort of been made for you and doing it yourself.
And I think, like, from the outside, it looks as though Ramadan is just about not eating, not drinking. It's not. So because what we've been talking about looking for ways we'd like to change, and good things we'd like to start doing. So because we're focusing on how can we get closer to Allah, it enriches it. It means it's not just about the food and drink. And when you're not eating for all those hours, it just frees up so much time to do these other beneficial things that we want to do.
But also it's there to remind us how poor are.
Yeah.
How they suffer.
Yeah.
You don't even end up eating that much when you break your fast.
Yeah, that's right.
You seem to feel full after just a few spoons because
The stomach
your
is
stomach's
so
just so empty.
My children made me laugh when I tried it out a couple of years ago. They wouldn't eat in front of me. They're like, hiding food. I said, it's okay, it's fine, I'll be fine, don't worry about it. And it was fine. But if we don't want to eat in front of you, well, it's alright, don't worry.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like it's the same with the prayers. People say, you have to pray 5 times a day.
It's not
it's not a burden that somebody you do more than that as well. But it's just people's concept of it. So it's.
I find it calms me. It gives me peace, definitely. A Muslim friend said to me, "How do you feel now you've converted?" And I said to him, "Calm and peaceful."
Alhamdulillah, that's really good.
That's one of the most precious things you can have. Prophet said that true wealth is the wealth of the heart, ghina al-qalb, which is that, essentially, just contentment. It doesn't matter what you have, but you have that contentment.
We're going to go, so
Yeah, I think we're going to.
We'll see you next time, inshallah.
Inshallah, thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Salam.
Has anybody got any questions about the run up to Ramadan? Not Ramadan itself, but
Sorry, what was that?
any questions about the run up to Ramadan? So this is the last month before Ramadan, so a lot of it is just preparing yourself, ready for it. But this is a special month as well, so it's it's full of blessing as well. Yeah.
Well, if you find it hard, just pray. That's what
I think the preparation is good as well. If you start thinking now, like get your house cleaned up and things, one thing. But it's an opportunity to, as Sister Janice said, to put yourself right, to start again almost. Start again from here and getting in the habit of doing the 5 daily prayers on time, and other things as well. Keeping away from that which doesn't concern you. Because it means so much, that saying. It's not just don't be nosy. It's dealing with your own journey, your own problems first, sorting yourself out first, and then you can help others.
Yeah, so it's such a blessing, isn't it, that this comes every year. It kind of gives us a new chance again to try to, as you say, go forward, start
honestly,
again.
looking on it like that this year, last year I didn't feel quite the same, but this is an opportunity. You know, who knows, next year might not come.
Exactly.
You might not make it to next year.
Yeah.
You know.
And maybe something you tried last year, you know, try it again this year, you know. So you get sometimes you get these articles as well that come up with big lists that you should do during Ramadan. So I think don't make a big list, you know, just concentrate on a few things. And if you get those few things, you know, then you made progress and you can do other things. But if you try to do too much, you're just going to exhaust yourself. It's the same as we've been speaking about, you know. But maybe if there's something that you weren't so successful with, you think in the previous Ramadan, you know, inshallah, this might be, you know, you've progressed since then. So, you know, it's the effort, the intention that you put into it. You know, it's the desire to change something and to be better. You know, but don't overcrowd yourself.
I think that's one reason why after Ramadan people, you know, the Qur'ans are always open in Ramadan, but outside it, the mosques are empty because people just put too much effort in Ramadan. I think if you just live your life normally, but just add a few little things, and just let it evolve naturally. You know? And it's a sad situation in Muslim and in the Arab world anyway, that Ramadan is seen as a commercial opportunity, really, in terms of food products. Like food products at the supermarkets and all these, and the
TV serials,
TV series, TV programs, but chef programs tend to be increased during the day because women are cooking for the night, so they're preparing.
So also at night, it's night market, everything is open, which is great, but it's
I hate getting invited out for iftar because you know people they make this massive meal and you know you're keeping an eye on the clock. You don't want to eat too much because you're going for tarawih. You're keeping an eye on the clock, but none of the sisters will go, and they'll go, oh, just stay. And
the priorities.
Do you understand? So what they do is they're making the breaking the fast the big thing. Oh, we can eat,
rather than the
loads
prayers later.
Yeah, instead of just eat, alhamdulillah, just eat something and then go for the prayers of the evening. You know?
All that food needs to be clear.
So it becomes like a social thing.
There's a lot of good in that. It's not to put that down. It's where you're at, where your priorities.
Yeah, again, it's keeping the balance, isn't it? So that you can do that, but in a balanced way. You know? Not like having a big party every night.
Putting on weight. Some people put on weight in Ramadan.
But definitely we have a lot of just priorities are completely wrong in many people.
It's funny how you fast all those hours and then you break your fast with a couple of dates and a sip of water before you go to pray. You know, pray Maghrib in the house. And once you've had the dates, you actually realise, I don't feel hungry now. I always find that, you know. I mean, you eat something because you should, but it's amazing how just eating 3 dates and half a cup of water and that's it, you're fine. You know?
All your energy's back.
I think as well because the Prophet, peace be on him, taught us to, you know, because when you're eating something, you know, is it third parts? So you got your food, and the third part should be air, and the third part should be water. So it's not, you know. So, and you forget sometimes, like at Ramadan, some people just fill themselves up, you know. But if you do that, you're going to be standing absolutely bloated, you know. But so take you get in, rehydrate yourself, you know, with plenty of water. You know, so some nice simple food and some water is more beneficial for you than trying to eat a lot, you know. But, you learn by experience and that one, I think.
In fact, people forget the first part of the hadith. The Prophet said, it's enough for the son of Adam to luqaymat, in small mouthfuls, to keep his back, just to keep him standing. You know, then if you can't do that, then a third for the food, a third for the drink, and a third for your breath. You know, people think the third is the first thing, but before that he mentioned just a few mouthfuls. But obviously, if you can do a third, then that's good on you.
So, what are the arrangements for the May the 5th?
It's gonna be in. I think it's gonna be in Napier University. It's gonna be a full day of.
Which Napier?
Oh, is that the one you're doing with?
Sheikh Hassan Rabban.
Oh, yeah, because they.
We're just
I saw
finalising.
it posted
Yeah.
without real details.
We hadn't. Yeah. Now, inshallah, today it was more or less confirmed. Inshallah, so.
Which
Okay.
Napier?
It's a bit of Merkiston. There's a lecture theatre there. So it's,
Okay, so when they put make
Inshallah,
post,
the
I
next
can
day or
send
two.
it to everyone.
Next day or
on
two it should be
Instagram.
ready. Inshallah. We're not going to charge, unfortunately, but that's just for the venue and then the notes. We're going to print some notes. So. We generally wouldn't charge, but that's just how it is. Maybe people take it more seriously if they put their money on. Yeah.
So and so in 2 weeks' time.
Mhm.
So what would the date be in 2 weeks' time?
See, what would you do with it?
No. You can count. I can add. It was 14 plus.
Well, next week is
20.
26th.
We may. So we may.
What's your question?
Can't resist it.
So
What date?
would the
will-
date be?
what will the date be?
The next Thursday meeting.
26th.
No.
No.
Today is
The
17th.
one-
Third of May. So there'll be 2 days before
The
that.
third.
It'll be the what? Sorry,
Third of May.
Third of May.
What day is it today?
Yeah. So do you think it's worth
18th,
doing
19th.
something?
We'll do something, inshallah.
About
Yeah,
Ramadan,
it's been next week.
But then there'll be
No,
the next.
Saturday.
Oh,
The next Thursday will be already been Ramadan,
Yeah.
17th. So that'll be the last one.
Mm.
If we want, if this anyway, we can decide whether we want to do anything or not.
Mm.
The last one before Ramadan enters.
Inshallah, that'd be good.
Yeah, it'd probably help if we did.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, meeting Ramadan would be great.
So, have you got any questions that they want to kind of bring up about anything in general? Just don't ask about news. I've taken a holiday from news for the last sort of few weeks. That's one of the things that's sort of done. And it's you're kind of aware some things are happening, but you're not getting bogged down in all this sort of rubbishy type things.
If it's really important, you'll hear about it. Someone, hello, but you hear it.
For me, it's quite unfortunate because the World Cup starts.
When does it start? After Ramadan.
No, in the middle of Ramadan.
Allah, that's a big challenge.
That's a challenge. I think we did that was it not last Ramadan, but the one before that, I think, there's football on during Ramadan. Housefield brothers watching the TV when football.
Conflict of interest. Priorities.
Because you'll be in the mosque every night, won't you?
Yeah,
Sure,
Society
the mosque
content.
will probably put a screen up.
Yeah.
Take part.
If it's cricket.
So I think we just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us simplify our lives and to get rid of distractions so that we concentrate on the things that are really important. Concentrate on the simple things that will bring us closer to Him. Simple things that will teach us more about how the Prophet, peace be on him, lived his life. So that we can have kids sort of climb around us and we'll pay attention to them. And we're not distracted by a TV in the background. We're actually paying attention to the people that matter. And we think, especially with Ramadan coming up, of preparing ourselves for that and just to simplify and detox our brains as well as our bodies. But ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just to guide us by His light and to teach Him more and draw us closer towards Him and draw us closer towards the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and to grant us blessings from all the goodness that He's given us. So not the goodness that the world offers, which can be a false goodness. It doesn't last, but everlasting goodness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all praises to Allah, Lord of the heavens, Lord of the earth, the Almighty, the Absolute, Eternal. We ask Him to send peace and blessings upon His Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum. 2 weeks time, inshallah.